Mmathebe, I know Telkom also has several initiatives on the go to develop and support youth entrepreneurs like future makers, for example. What are you finding are the main stumbling blocks preventing them from getting their new businesses off the ground in your experience?
Good morning, Joanne, and good morning to your listeners and the audience joining us. I think before I start to talk about future makers, I want to touch on the concept of the entrepreneurial ecosystem within South Africa. So, one of the main things that I believe South Africa's entrepreneurial efforts are failing, I think it's because it has a very mixed approach to developing entrepreneurs. So, for example, the Global Entrepreneurship Monitor, which is the GEM report, a very reputable longitudinal study that studies entrepreneurship ecosystems across the world, has ranked South Africa 49th out of 54 countries, right? Ahead of only Croatia, Guatemala, Paraguay, and Iran, right? So war-stricken countries. And so with all the resources that we have, with all the government programs that we have, with all the supplier development programs that we have, I feel like the fundamental thing that's leading us to fail and be in this position is the mixed approach of saying we're developing small businesses as well as entrepreneurs. And I think that there's a clear distinction between what an entrepreneurial venture looks like and the policies required to nurture that venture, as well as a small business and the nurturing of that. And so when we talk about youth challenges, I think we need to be very realistic in terms of how we solve them through business and through entrepreneurship. Firstly, entrepreneurship is quite a difficult journey that does require really high end type of skills, problem solving skills, critical thinking skills. Um, and requires an ecosystem that nurtures innovation, research, nurtures transfer of knowledge, nurtures communities of best practice, and result in businesses that are global and not just local. Whereas small businesses, and in fact, there's a scholar, a researcher who really worked tirelessly in Israel to develop that ecosystem called Daniel Eisenberg. He goes as far as to say that we should actually be thinking about small businesses as part of social development, right? Social development and not necessarily economic development. And I think therein lies in the segue into what then must be done and how then do we approach this. So, for example, when we talk about access to capital as a component of the entrepreneurship ecosystem, we need to probably differentiate between microcredit that is necessary, and definitely small businesses are necessary for survival and for feeding families. And then we need to think about patient capital and entrepreneurial finance that is necessary for the growth of entrepreneurial ventures. And so then for me, then the challenges in terms of how then do we move forward with preparing the youth for this. I mean, Jem highlights a very fundamental thing which is important for entrepreneurship, which is the intention to start a business, right? And the believing that you can actually run a successful business that scales globally. And South Africa has a really high fear of failure, right? So for me, the first step of solving that problem is to work on the mindset, and to make sure that we're taking entrepreneurs on a journey of discovery that is structured with the right skills and with the right experimentation. And that's why we've started the Township Innovation Incubator at Telkom Future Makers, because part of that is really to start working on the mindset, looking at real clear problems, understanding their scalability, understanding your customer, and understanding their use cases and validating it not just based on your current community, but also in terms of any other global practices or global scaling initiatives or rather global scaling markets. Whereas with small businesses, there are programs to support that, and that is primarily to make sure that you link those small businesses to how to manage their businesses a lot better, how to manage their finances a lot better, such that they stay sustainable in their context, while at the same time trying to work on the mindset. So just to summarize that, and I think our approach has really been to differentiate between an entrepreneurial high growth venture versus a small business. And I think in South Africa, we definitely need both. We do have an informal market, but I think the priority with the limited resources that we have should actually be, to think about what are those things that need to be in place to enable high growth enterprises to scale, and such that when they do scale, they provide what we call spillover effects. And spillover effects, as I mentioned, Daniel Heisenberg talks about how, by creating a high growth enterprise, you're able then to create a community of small businesses around that. So if you think about, for example, let's just take Uber as an example. So part of it is to create a community of these small owner-driver businesses that really are there to make sure that they solve the hunger challenge, they solve the clear social economic development challenges. But at the same time, you do need an environment that really nurtures the likes of Uber. So you need a regulatory environment that is friendly to that. You need access to capital that is friendly to that. And when you look at what we are doing in South Africa, when we start to see these platform businesses, we're either quite hostile towards them from a regulatory perspective, we're either wanting it to be equitably distributed. And I think that becomes a challenge. And that really, for me, is an assessment of an analysis, or rather, why we are 49 out of 54 countries from a national entrepreneurship context perspective. So we actually have to prioritize when we say we want to develop the youth, in which direction are we developing the youth? What are the real skills that we want to give the youth? We should be focusing on problem solving skills. We should be focusing on critical thinking skills, and definitely our education is failing us. And part of that that we've taken on is to make sure that we really nurture the thinking journey a lot better.
Yeah.